Hello, class. Um, Today we are going to discuss lesson 5, which is really important. These next 3 chapters have are carrying forward the concept of the barrel model of culture, and so they're all 3 of them are a little bit longer than the other chapters because they are sort of just kind of like a core nugget of the entire semester, you could say, and really important for anthropology and culture anthropology. Most textbooks are built around, the entire textbooks are built around these 3 chapters pretty much. So yeah, this is about infrastructure. This is about technology, and the name of the subtitle here, "We Shape Our Tools and Our Tools Shapes Us," is the big idea for this lesson, and it is really kind of the essence of really the nugget of this chapter, which we're going to pursue and sort of go into some examples of it. It's really just really profound for us to look at it today because we're going through a period of time where our tools are really, in a sense, owning us, not just shaping us, but they are defining us. So your experiment, you're supposed to give up your challenge for this is an experiment. Unlike the challenge in which you were trying something new for 14 days, here you're going to give up something and try giving up something that is challenge yourself. Don't just really don't be easy. The only way that we can grow and become more is by challenging ourselves in profound ways, and this is totally, you get what you get from this class, what you put into it, and if you just want an A, then yeah, you can manage to get an A without really putting a lot of effort in this class, I assume. But if you want to walk away with an experience that actually has a impact on who you are and potentially what you might do in 10 years, this is really something that it's on you to make most of this. Highly recommend giving up something that is technology related. I did this in the last 7 weeks class, in which I gave up actually looking at my computer before going to bed, and I read, and I still continue. I'm still doing that. I'm doing a little bit of both. I've kind of minimized how much I'm looking at my computer. I still like watching a movie sometimes, but I'm not going into the news. I'm sort of limiting what I do. So limit yourself, from something that that you're addicted to, and that's sort of controlling you in a habit of your own. And then how does this technology, and after doing that for 48 hours or however long it takes for you to do it, to get an experience of insight into who you are, I did it for a whole week, and then reflect upon that with how does this technology change my views and experiences? How does this technology change social relationships? You need to have some profound insights. Do it until you have some profound insights to these big questions. Extend it for as long as you need to. So the impact of technology, this is a clip from our author, Mike Wesch, who was in Papua New Guinea doing his field research. And he is looking at one of the first anthropologists to go into this area was Edmund Carpenter. And he was actually an anthropologist who was tasked with introducing technology into, this is kind of a taboo of anthropology, but this is what his task was, and he profoundly regrets having done it, although it was going to happen, whether he was going to do it or not. But this is actually a clip that shows the impact of people who had never seen an image of themselves.
In the late 1960s, anthropologist Edmund Carpenter was hired as a communications consultant for what was then the territory of Papua and New Guinea. Colonial administrators were seeking advice on how they might use radio, film, and television to educate and develop remote regions. It gave Carpenter what he called an unparalleled opportunity to step in and out of 10,000 years of media history. He recorded and created some of the most remarkable events in local media history, such as the first time people saw their own pictures or heard their own voices. Carpenter says that when he first gave people a picture of themselves, they couldn't read them. To them, the pictures were flat, static, and lifeless, meaningless. Recognition gradually came into the subject's face and fear. You can see it in the film footage. One man seems to become suddenly self-conscious about his hat. Another retreats to his house, alone, staring at his image for over 20 minutes. He argued that the Polaroid and other recording media created a situation in which, quote, for the first time, each man saw himself and his environment clearly, and he saw them as separable. He says that when he came back to one of these villages months later, he didn't recognize the place. Houses had been rebuilt in a new style. They carried themselves differently. They acted differently. In one brutal movement, they had been torn out of a tribal existence and transformed into detached individuals. Lonely, frustrated, no longer at home, anywhere. Such experiences left Carpenter disillusioned about the effects of technology on indigenous peoples and concerned about the effects of media everywhere. I felt like an environmentalist hired to discover more effective uses of DDT, he lamented. I think media are so powerful they swallow cultures, he says. And media, he says, play no favorites.
So that was actually the voice of Mike Wesch, the author of our textbook, who studied Papua New Guinea himself, writing about, talking about Edmund Carpenter, who was an anthropologist who went into Papua New Guinea in the 1960s, introducing a technology. When Mike Wesch was going in the early 2000s, he saw a transformation, a major change in the culture while he was there, because they started to add the counting, the census, just like we count every 10 years our population. They started to, while Mike Wesch was there, started to introduce aspects of counting population, but also a form of government that is very much well westernized. And he saw a major transformation of just how they built homes and just their culture dramatically shifted from little tiny nuance of change. Introducing technology, changing how government, how people are represented, and how people manage themselves. Dramatic, and this is what we call entanglement. You change one thing, you introduce something into a culture, it changes. It has ripple effects throughout it, and that's what we're going to look at today quite a bit. So if we go back in time, before modern technology. Go back to hunting and gatherers, think 12,000 years ago, around 10,000 BC. We were all small band foragers, living very much well egalitarian cultures, egalitarian lifestyles, where female and male work was equal in value. Um, and where people shared, we had what we call a culture of sharing, where we shared with each other, and very much there were challenges. There were the challenges of living were different though. Hunting and the dangers of hunting were definitely serious and brutal, and people did not live long lives sometimes. Um, but they everybody went with what they needed as far as food for the most part. Um, and this was referenced as being in anthropology the original affluent society. There's a very much a romanticization of this world, but there's something for us to learn from it as well. Um, so looking at the transformation that happened about 10,000, 11,000 years ago, um, during this sort of pivotal moment and when we became hunter and gatherers into agricultural, what we refer to as the Neolithic Revolution, the agricultural revolution, um, introducing the domestication of both plants and animals around 10,000 years ago. You had some major cultural transformations. This was a pivotal period of time, and 10,000 years ago was the last ice age. So the earth cooled and it dried, causing people to gather near sources of water that were, limited amount of water. So, and out of survival, they learned to how to plant crops by observing. There's a lot of different theories about how they initially started to plant crops and how the technique of learning. But this definitely they had, of course, by coming together as groups to domesticate plants and animals, planting crops and controlling animals for their purposes, developed larger populations that became settled and sedentary. And through larger populations, the growth of populations, they were able to actually, not everybody had to worry about bringing food in. That certain people started doing different things, like developing technology to maybe to house the food, to protect them, to store the food. So division of labor started happening, and governments started to. People were designated as being the peacekeepers. The people were designated as being the leaders of the government eventually, and out of that we see this sort of transformation of human culture, and which our tools for creating agriculture started to recreate who we are. So we have this model, this barrel model that we've looked at earlier in the semester that we're coming back to, with the superstructure, social structure, infrastructure in our environment. And we talked about how culture is integrated. Change one, it trickles down and it changes the other. So if you change the technology, it's going to change how we relate to each other in social structure, which is also going to change our ideas and concepts and perspectives, worldviews of the world. So where we have gotten ourselves, looking at yesterday and today, we're going to go into this more deeply, of course. Yesterday, of course, agriculture made planting of crops made life easier in generation one, so it improved the generation one and expands in future generations, and really, in a sense, you think about it becomes, in a sense, a successful mechanism for survival. But it doesn't really. There's a new challenge, and life isn't no longer, as far as if you look at hunter and gatherers, they spent 40 hours, 42 hours a week on quote unquote work, and they had a life of, in a sense, a life of leisure outside of those hours, and there was a lot of playfulness. Agricultural society really transformed that to where our working lives is our leisure. We work and we work and we work. And there really is no returning back. It's difficult to reverse course once we have made inroads like this. Today we have email, cars, electricity. All these things are essential tools for our living, and it increases our productivity. But now, everybody's communicating faster, and so we all have to run. We have to all run faster to keep up. And cars make it easier, yes, but then you're spread out in cities, and you're having to spend 30 minutes, like I do, 30 minutes to get to work and 30 minutes to get back home. You're spending an hour and sometimes and a half hour more on top of that if you get into traffic, and then you have to go to the store, and that's 2 hours. So you're just spending a lot of time in your car. So it's a rat race. It's hard for us to get out of it. So population growth 10,000 years ago went off the charts. There was a greater production and surplus of wealth as a result. There's a greater diversity of products, greater diversification of jobs, increased technologies. But those are great, but not great, but they have positive aspects of them. We became less efficient with our energy. Our labor is replaced by mechanization through the industrialization revolution. Our labor demands, we have this increased labor demands with specialization. Our social relations become more unequal. We have a decrease in crop variation because of our agriculture is very specialized, and we have a decline in health. Our actual dietary intake now is much more, in a sense, impoverished than it used to be, because it's much more redundant and less variety. And we also, because we live in larger groups, we have more social diseases. We have higher stress, and some would say less happiness. Our culture is less happy today, especially Western culture, less happy today than in the past. So if you look at the job, this is just sort of sums it up as far as what we used to do and what we do today, going back to 1800. Even you go back to like 1900, 40% of people in 1900 were in agriculture. Today we have 2.6%, under 3% are in agriculture who grow our food. Everybody else are specialists. Everybody else is doing tasks that we used to not do 200 years ago. And as a result, our bodies, our physicality has transformed. We have great athletes today who can do amazing things, right? But the average Joe and the average Jane and the average non-binary is actually not able to squat because we sit in offices and spaces that are not conducive for our physicality and for our human potential. And we wear shoes that crunch our feet into shape that is just completely not how we've evolved over time to walk. And this is a great image here of somebody who runs barefoot versus somebody who wears business shoes on a daily basis. And we live in cities and areas, urban areas that are sprawling and disconnected from each other as far as people, community. We live in concrete jungles. So new technologies, relationships changed, communities change, we change. And if we go back to our Barrow model and we look at the model of culture, infrastructure, how does technology impact how does technology impact other technologies? This is what we're going to talk about today, and it's the trickle effect of the entanglement of our lives in technology. And how does technology impact social relationships? We'll talk about that. How will technology impact our experiences, senses, beliefs, and values? We'll talk about that. So let's go back in time again to the 1980s. I was in school and high school and middle school and during the 1980s myself, and it's something that period of time was very profound in the transformation of our culture. But Neil Postman, writer at the time, summarized our culture and the impact that TV was having on it. So TV came about in the 1950s, right? So we're talking about 30-something years of TV at the time. He said that actually TV land is one of irrelevance. Um, it's incoherent. It's irrelevant because entertainment is great for us to sit back and be, just sort of receive information and entertaining information, but it's not important. It's coherent, incoherent, because you're getting this barrage of different messages that are fragmented and disconnected from different angles, and it's impotent, and that we are watching a story, and we're watching stories of wars and devastation and some human drama where we're not enticed to do anything about it. So we are, in a sense, impotent. And by 2000, Robert Putnam is saying that, well, we are becoming more and more disconnected by this world of technology to the point where we are bowling alone. And he looks at the trends of 25 years, and he looked at how attending club meetings went down by 58%, how family dinners together dropped by 43%, having friends over dropped by 35%. So there was this awareness we were losing a sense of community, and actually there were more people bowling at the time than ever, but bowling clubs were going down and people were bowling alone and not bowling with each other. So this sense of disconnection is something that was really developing in a very profound way that we could see from a social scientist perspective. Cultural inversion. So these technologies that are introduced into our lives are answering something, but they're not really necessarily responding to the needs of what we are longing for. So technologies, we long for community during these, especially the 1980s, 2000s, early 2000s. We're longing for community, but the technologies that are being given to us were actually facilitating individualism. We're longing for relationships, but the technologies are giving us independence. We're longing for authentic relationships, authenticity, human authenticity, but these technologies are giving us commercialization. And so this cultural aversion of what we value and what the technologies give us is something that we're going to come back to this theme later on. Come back to this sort of dynamic, this tension that's created between what we long for and what the technologies are giving us. So going to 2003, this guy Gary Brosman I'm not going to try to play this video because it is highly copyrighted, and I realize it's not something that I can't even put on a PowerPoint because it's copyrighted so much. So it's controlled online. It's a viral video. You can easily find it. It's an entertaining video. So this is pre-YouTube, right? What happened here was this Romanian pop song made in Europe, went to Japan, where it was downloaded and created a sort of a mashup animation of it, which made its way all over and to America, to the United States, and then to New Jersey. This guy, Gary Brosman, in December 2004, decided, he is, great big nerd. Like, the nerds actually ruled the internet in the early days. He made this video of him lip syncing and dancing to it. It's really entertaining. It really brings joy, a moment of joy, and it went he sent it out, and it ended up in emails all over the world, and eventually on the Today Show and popular TV programs at the time. So in 2007, Numa Numa had 2,000 hits, and at the time it was a lot of hits. So yeah, this was. People started to do variations of this of their own, and in a way, he was kind of connecting through technology. He was making human connection through this video, and so 2005, YouTube was launched. That's just 16 years ago, folks. That's just so short while ago. And the first video that went viral was Numa Numa. And like I said, 2007 on YouTube, it had 58,000 hits. And this was definitely something, everybody was making up their own version of it. And it was like everybody was joining the Numa Numa dance with this, and people were connecting with it, right? So, yes, definitely a connectivity was happening, which is what we long for. We long for that, right? Fast forward merely, a decade and less than a decade, 2015, and this is what we have.
And while there, maybe they'll tweet us their fan photo, BB. Now's the time, fans. Get on the Twitter with a hashtag of the whole thing, AZDataStrongFan. Then you might see your fan photo at a Diamondback TV broadcast brought to you by T-Mobile. I mean, look at the one on the right.
Do you have to make faces when you take selfies?
Wait, one more now.
Oh, there you go.
Better angle. Oh, check it. Did that come out okay?
That's the best one of the 300 pictures I've taken of myself today.
Every girl in the picture is locked into her phone.
Oh, Lord.
Every single one is dialed in. Welcome to parenting in 2015. They're all just completely transfixed by the technology. David Peralta. Oh, hold on. I'd take a selfie with the hot dog. Selfie with the churro. Selfie just of a selfie.
I can't even get my phone to take pictures.
Took a picture of your thumb last week. That was good.
Here's my first bite of the churro. Here's my second bite of the churro.
You know, the beauty of baseball is you can sit next to your neighbor and have a conversation, or you can just completely ignore them. Peralta knocks it into center. David tonight 2 for 2, a leadoff single here in the fourth, and nobody noticed.
So yeah, we are now, we went from being kind of uncomfortable being on camera to completely being obsessed with being on our camera and actually looking at images, completely transformed. And our social media, looking at the rise of social media, look at from 2000 to 2019, Facebook users is just off the charts. The largest social media platform in the world has 2.4 billion users. YouTube and WhatsApp are also more than 1 billion users each. It's dramatic. This is again quite what happened to the world of Twitter is still, it's quite small, but it's still, we're talking about 329 million. Anyway, so this is point made. These numbers are huge. 7.7 billion people in the world, and 3.5 billion of us are online. So over half of people in the world are online. This means social media platforms are used by 1 in 3 people in the world. Wow. So big questions, concerns. Technology, how does it impact other technologies? How does technology impact social relations? And how will it impact world view? So we have this tension, this cultural tension that exists. We value community relationships with authenticity, but our technologies are giving us individualism, independence, commercialism, and as a sum, what we're longing for these values. There's this tension between what we value and what we express. It starts to offer us a new set of values. And so we recreate our worldview. We recreate what we value based upon our technology. And can we get both? Can we get both what this community relationships authenticity and what the technology is given us? And new technology gives us new things that we start to value. We recreate what we value. So this cultural tension is something that is what we're pursuing is connection without restraint. Connection without restraint, which is what our technology has given us. So online porn gives you connection and pleasure, but do not have constraint of a relationship. This explains porn to some degree. We get pleasure without constraint. Publicly, we're able to go into the public, and if you're socially insecure, you have your technology to hide behind. It reduces anxiety. Our screens allow us to protect ourselves. So there's another side of technology. Speaking of human connection, there's the other side of technology in which we actually find humanity in it. And this is a great example of how this man who lost his, he and his wife lost their baby to SIDS in 2007, and he became very deeply depressed. And through his YouTube channel, he found a new sense of life, a new empowerment. And this is a great example of how there's always two sides of the coin for technology, right? The dark and the light.
Even though I was going to miss my little guy every single day. I needed an escape from reality. And when I came back to YouTube, it became that place. But I didn't feel comfortable being myself on YouTube anymore. I was trying to get away from the emotions that I couldn't control in my real life. And that is when my friends came to stay with me. April 17th, 2007. Creating characters gave me an escape. It allowed me to be silly. It allowed me to act how I wanted to feel. It became a form of therapy, a coping mechanism. And after a while, it brought fun back to YouTube for me. It also allowed me to be creative. I was able to create stories, relationships, and silly drama between myself and my characters. What was just going to be a few videos with these guys ended up being my niche, and what I loved doing. It also brought many of you into my life. You accepted my characters, even embraced them. And by doing so, you opened your arms to me. You allowed me to continue to have the escape I still need from the hard times, while giving me the chance to talk about what I have gone through. And I'm eternally grateful to you all. The number of videos I've made is far less important to me than the journey these videos have led me on. And the friends I have made through YouTube are some of the closest I have in my life. Some people have said that the videos we make on YouTube should be created in hopes to change the world. I've made mine to help me live in it. And whether I make 100 more or 1,000 more, I will know forever that this website, this community, helped bring me life again.
So yeah, as you see, it is, technology has the potential to offer that deep connection that we're pursuing. So on the darker side, virtual reality is something that is just as the effect of the internet was so important to in 2007, that transformation, this move to virtual reality goggles, it is something that is has the potential to take on another layer of impact for our relationships and our experience of the world. And so when you look at these virtual reality goggles, initially it's like, yeah, this is really cool. But studies have shown that actually these virtual goggles, when you take them off, physically you have you have to adjust to your surroundings, and there's sort of miscalculation and reaching, but also the sort of detachment, physical detachment from the world around us. Studies have shown that it helps to decrease our connection to our surroundings. And there's this definitely sort of depression that goes with it. If you spend a lot of time in it, people who come out of it report having sort of a disconnection between what is real and what is not, and a breaking off of sort of like what is real is sort of the sense that your sensitivity to what is real becomes like, this is boring, this is it's sort of a sadness for the real world. And definitely it's a definite it's something to be concerned about, because where we're heading to this is that we're having virtual reality come into to pornography and use for taking pornography to a whole nother level, just opening up a big can of worms of issues. So it's things like these that actually people and that are writing about, like Castronova here and his book Exodus to the Virtual World, who's saying that actually there's going to be a big exit to the virtual world because it's much more interesting and exciting than what we are living in the real world. And using the example of Worldcraft, 26 million users as of February 2021 is what I just pulled off the internet. So we're talking about 5.2 million monthly players. These virtual worlds have exploded out of online game culture, and now culture that capture the attention of millions of people. And yes, it has its dark and its light side of things. On the lighter side of things, or the positive side of things, I wouldn't say this is light, this is dark in a sense, but because it deals with post-traumatic stress. But when people are put through therapeutic regimens with these goggles, with virtual reality, former soldiers who are suffering through PTSD, they put on these virtual goggles, and they're able to actually work through their fears that they have embodied from being at war for so long. But in therapeutic situations, more simple, more common, I guess you could say. It's been shown to work with people who suffer through depression by virtually experiencing the crying of a child, and patients are able to improve their condition by comforting somebody virtually. This is something that definitely has the potential for being very positive. And in the world of journalism, another great example. Virtual reality now, journalists are starting to create virtual stories to where the readers, the quote unquote readers, can become witness to real life events through virtually being recreated through VR technology. So yes, this is definitely the impact is profound. If we look at social relationships and how technology this guy's been going to amusement parks for the last 10 years, well, from 2017 to 2010 to 2017, taking pictures in the same locations and finding this sort of noticeable change in how people engage with each other, and this loss of sort of connection. Cell phones are sort of putting this sort of divisiveness between each other. Here's another set of images looking at what people used to be like and where they are in 2017 in the same places. Looking at concerts, what used to be and what is today. We're no longer, in a sense, participating, we're observing. That's interesting with anthropologists in this world of anthropology. We're participant observers. So we're in a sense trained to walk that middle ground. But in the everyday life of people who living through their lives and through their daily lives, most people are leaning towards the observation and not really participating anymore. So The entanglement aspect of technology is something that is greatly highlighted by just looking at the example of the air conditioner. This technology was invented in 1902, but it did not really get popular until the 1930s because it was a limited audience initially, too expensive for most people to afford. And when you walk now into the center of town and walk from the center of a lot of towns to the edge to where the suburbs, you can see the shift in the presence of the impact of the air condition, because what you see in the change is how front porches have changed. Before the air condition, you had the front porch culture, where people, all homes were built around, with a huge front porch. And it was people because that's where they hung out. If it was a hot day, then you're out on the front porch. It's a way to be in your house, but not in your house, right? So it's where people congregated. If you walk down the street, you could always talk to a neighbor because often most people are out on the front porch most days. So new houses today, well, here comes the absence of the front porch, but also the inclusion of the car. And so what is replaced? You have these sort of fake front porches, but you always have prominently featured is where the car needs to go. So this is this entanglement is dramatized greatly by this. You have the replacement of human relationships is replaced by the human car for our mobilization to get around these sprawling network of roads and cities that are sprawling with suburbs. So entanglement theory there's many different examples. Any sort of technology you can use as being introduce fire, and you can see sort of the ripple effect of what it does and what you need to keep fire going, or plaster. It's a web of change. And so if you look at Papua New Guinea, Michael West uses this example in the book, and I'll use it myself to highlight this dynamic. And clothes were introduced 20 years before Michael West came in by missionaries. And for clothes to exist, you need to be able to wash clothes. So you have to get soap. And with soap, this is something that, of course, they don't have, so they have to access it somehow. For washing clothes, you need to dry them. So you need places to dry away from the smoke that is in the houses, because the houses typically are built for funneling smoke up into the roof and to escape. So they have to build new houses, and these houses, to have these new houses, you need tin roofs. Separate houses need tin roofs because the prior roofs were actually made of leaves and wood, and that would attract insects. And so you can't have bugs that would eat your clothes. So you get tin roofs. And tin roofs, you have to have nails and hammers. And also these houses would need to be square. So you need to have geometrical, trigonometric information and understanding. So you need education in schools. And not only to that, but to do all this, you need money. So the trickle effect of clothes, well-intended missionaries who introduced clothes had this trickle effect of actually transforming not only other tools that they need, but also, their economics and money. So entanglement theory is something that, if you look at today, we went from 12,000 years ago from making no footprint at all to having today this new era that we're living through, this reshaping the stratigraphy of our Earth, our layers of our Earth. Future archaeologists will uncover specific layers in the Earth that was shaped by what we refer to as the Anthropocene. We created a whole new era of geological time, and so we have, as far as the impact of our on our Earth and our environments is something that our technology is taking a huge toll on. And so, yes, the consequences of agriculture, we've talked about this, and just to highlight this notion of we shaped our tools and our tools shaped us, and going from we're looking at 200 years of having mechanical muscle that is replacing human labor. And so 200 years of human labor has evolved, and what we need to look at is the innovation of the spurring from our industrial revolution to present day has increased our productivity. Yes, it's given us new jobs, new specialized jobs, and it has, in a sense, given us a higher standard of living. So, the average person is living a higher standard of life than anybody was 2,000, 3,000 years ago. But the problem is that these gains are most likely to be short term. That's the concern, because the impact is something that we really, as far as thinking down the road, the calculation is something that we're not really on top of, and if you start to look at some of this stuff, which we're getting ready to, you start to realize, is this the right direction? We're heading into the second machine age. The first machine age was actually ran by humans, in which machines actually operated to do certain tasks, right? The second machine age actually is one in which machines operate on their own. So we used to have machines that computers, robots that help build cars, but they could not learn anything new. The new mechanical mind, the new machine, the new robot actually are very much generalized robots, in which they can be taught to do many different, limitless tasks. So we're said to be in the dawn of the robot age, in which these things become so cheap. Also, they're more affordable. We might even have them in our houses, and we do have them in our houses. There's some, this kind of technology is becoming much more available. So if you look at just our go into Walmart, you go into any stores today, you see the impact of some of this robot age technology, in which you have one manager overseeing 4 to 8 checkout lines, because you have this AI technology in which people can just go up and scan their own products and pay for it through the technology. So should we be concerned about this? Well, if you check out CGP Grey, his work on YouTube, he compares the metaphor of horses from 100 years ago to present day machines, and how we are interacting with them. Horses when they were replaced by the cars back in 1915, they were said to be able to do new work that was less dangerous. They used to be employed all over the place before cars, but they didn't have to go into battle. They didn't have to be put into dangerous spots. But look at what the horses are used today. They're limited. They're not used in our everyday life at all. And so the question is, better technology, does it make better jobs for humans? Are we supposed to be improving our jobs? And so these robots are something, it's really fascinating. You look at the history of this. You go back to 2004. They had this big race in the desert, and it was supposed to be supposed to go 142 miles. But the furthest any of the robots, any of the cars that were self-propelling went mile 7 and died. So these autonomous cars were not really. They weren't there yet, and they were kind of the laughing stock of industry, and people thought this would never work. Well, 2010, here we have the Google driving car in 2010, the first person to drive a robot car from Google, and this blind person is an image. You can find it on YouTube. Then also now we have this whole, understanding that there's 18-wheelers and big trucks now that can be ran without there's a passenger in the back seat, but there is no human being in the driver's seat here. So these 18-wheelers are definitely on their way. Currently, what they are saying is that these 18-wheelers can go from major city to next major city, and then the driver has to take over to get into the city. But really, as far as highway patrol, highway self-propulsion, it is just the truck that needs to be there. No human. So we have an Uber fleet in Pittsburgh now, in taxis that will can be do not need a human being driving. So this entanglement theory, if we get rid of cars, what's this going to do to our city space and urban planning? As developers are already looking at this and designing urban areas that are replacing all the parking space that we used to need. If you think about it, if we define the purpose of owning a car, nobody really needs to own a car. If we have these taxis that we can just jump in, take us to the next place, we don't need parking lots. And what will we do with the parking garages? So planners and developers are actually already in the works. That to me is kind of exciting. That's something that on the positive side of things, we can rethink our urban landscape. And then looking at robots that are these tiny little, smaller scale robots that are they're like ants that are working together, and it's referred to as swarm technologies. They're magnetic blocks. My girls have these magnetic this magnetic toy kit that a lot of kids have, that you can build structures with these magnets. Well, these don't even need human interaction. These things, just you put them out there and they start to build things. And this is also represented in drones, and how drones now these drones actually are working on their own. Humans code them, but then they don't need any sort of human that is operating on any sort of remote control. This is just drones. They're building a bridge. So think about this. What might that replace? As far as construction work goes, jobs, and this notion of the driverless car. Thinking about the driverless car is a little eerie, because as far as transportation alone, accounts for 1% of the world's entire workforce, 70 million jobs. This is just one domain in which artificial intelligence will have an impact. So you got innovation, increased productivity, new jobs, higher standard of living. Get rid of these jobs, how are we going to have a higher standard of living? So looking at technology and this is Ray Kurzweil's chart, who documents the evidence of what was referred to as Moore's Law over the last 120 years. Moore's Law points out that computing processes power doubles in speed every 1.5 years. So the consequences of digitization of everything, this has held up for 120 years. Every 18 months we update our phones. That's because the processor gets better and faster, and it's what happens when this happens? Twice as good times 10. Within 10 years, what we have today is only a fraction of what we had 10 years from now. So this is definitely, things are going fast. The internet's growing tenfold every 5 years or so, exponential growth. And you think about our phones today. I'll hold up my phone here. This phone, in about, as far as thinking 18 months from now, the power of this will be half. So It is definitely, if this continues not very far down the road, we'll have very microscopic entities that are more powerful than the phones we currently have. So futurists agree on one basic trend: ubiquitous networks, ubiquitous computing, ubiquitous information, ubiquitous speed, at unlimited speed, about everything, everywhere, and from anywhere. So futurists agree that we are heading in a way, in a direction in which networks, these computer networks, are going to be everywhere. They are everywhere, and this has transpired at just speeds that are just hard to fathom. And it's going to be calculating eventually, not now, but it's going to be calculating everything. And if you look at the technology of NFC technology, this is near field communication technology that allows for our devices to speak to each other. This is being amped up by what is called RFID chips. RFID chips are starting to be placed in things all over the world, even in humans themselves, but particularly in stores like Walmart, which now has over 1,000 stores have RFID chips in their products. And there are billions of chips out there in circulation. Food packaging and stores, they really having these chips in, it gives them information about consumerism, and they're able to respond to consumer demand. So that's why whenever you'll see a major shift in what's on the shelves from day to day based upon the weather. So this is, this kind of smart technology is being used in consumerism. It's also being placed in humans. It's being placed in our pets, able to keep up with our pets, our luggage. This is a way for us to track this RFID technology. Humans, the Mexican government's been using it for many years, actually, to give authorization to personnel in their government access to access points, high secured access points, allowing for certain personnel to come in and go. So RFID chips are being placed in humans. So this information is becoming more and more readable by machines. We teach machines with every search. Machines are the ones that are reading the information that we're giving them. And the web is learning about us, and it appears to become more intelligent than us at times. Humans aren't looking at this stuff. Machines and computers are reading them, and it's allowing to feed into algorithms that predict what we're going to do and our behavior. And this again equates to ubiquitous computing techniques. So ubiquitous computing techniques can be seen in our stores in particular. This is a story from 2012 in which a father goes raging into Target, and he's mad because Target is sending his daughter, who is a 14-year-old, sending her information or advertisements for pregnancy. And he's like, "Hey, what are you doing sending my 14-year-old daughter pregnancy information?" Well, it happens that, and he left, he sort of left mad out of the store after yelling at the manager. He went home and he had a long talk with his daughter, and he found out that she was pregnant. And it comes out that actually Target, it shows that there was a study that showed that people who buy unscented towels and lotion together, there's a 70% probability that you're pregnant. And so there is big data about mundane things about us that is very, very much predicting who we are. So we have, as far as this notion of ubiquitous calculating, and it's not surprising that in 2012, IBM's Watson took on the Jeopardy champions of all time and destroyed them in the game of Jeopardy, destroyed them. And Ken Jennings, one of the champions, said in his final his final round, he said, "I, for one, welcome our new computer overlords." So definitely some interesting as far as the capacity for our technology is it's we're not really calculating what it can calculate and where this is heading. The 5 white-collar jobs robots have already taken. Robots have taken. When you look at a report, when a event happens and you see a report come out on the internet that is AP, and it's within seconds after the event has happened, a sporting event, that is computer generated. Reporters already are being replaced by computer generated reports. Online marketers are studying. Look at Facebook. They study what we are using in our language, in our own local communication with each other. They're studying words that we use, and they're repurposing those within their own marketing. So you're being in a sense targeted for products based in a certain intelligence, using your own language for marketing specifically to you as a person. So the marketing techniques that are addressing you and your friends might be different based upon what particular words you're using. So online marketers, doctors, this is a little premature, but doctors in long term are definitely, as far as diagnosing diseases, cancer, they are already leaning on computer information. So this is in the works. Lawyers, a lot of law is precedent, and the process of discovery takes up much of the time for lawyers. So using software to do research on cases is something that is, of course, it's already happening. So in TurboTax, so financial analysts, this is something that is, it's already replacing jobs. In the top 30 employee jobs, this is 45% of deployment. Potentially, all 30 of these jobs have the potential to be replaced by technology in not too far down the road. That would be a 45% unemployment. And mind you that the Great Depression was a 25% unemployment. It would be devastating, to say the least. So looking at the impact on our economic reality, if you look at the first wave of machines, the first wave of robots in 2000, which started about 2000, look at the profit climb in 2000 up for the blue line. That is the corporate profits. The everyday individual, the worker, is in red, and that has been declining since 2000. So our profits have been going up. Of course, that big drop down in 2008 was the Great Recession, 2008. And so the profits have been going down, 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 down in the red. That's the workers, and the blue. There was a quick rebound in 2010 for corporate profits, but not for worker profits. So 1998, 194 billion hours worked by humans. 2013, there was also another 194 billion hours worked by humans. However, the problem is that in 2013, we had 42% higher output, 40% higher output productivity, and then we had 40 million more Americans. So, to break that down, where is the extra productivity going? Where is that output going to? Who is benefiting from the output? Is it the workers? No, it's the top 1%. You look at Blockbuster in 2004, it had 84,000 employees. Look at Netflix. Netflix has 4,500 employees. Basically, Netflix, in a sense, replaced Blockbuster and all the other local neighborhood video stores. There's this notion of sharing economy, and you think that Uber, Airbnb is a great development versus taxis and hotels, but these things are unregulated. There is no security for workers. There's no benefits. the sharing economy is something that seems to be a great idea, but really it's been built on exploitation at this point. And worker organization is something that has been minimized from being able to be organized. So this superstar economy, this growth in the top 1%, the main thing is that automation magnifies innovation, benefits an elite group, and priorly, automation, in a sense, before, when you created an innovation, you would need an army of people to actually implement it. But when you create innovation, you're replacing an army. And so this technology is something that magnifies this inequality. So yes, this is Lipscomb and Schmidt at Cornell University. They've been studying algorithms and how computers learn from a double pendulum. And computers are watching the movements of this pendulum and trying to come up with an algorithm that can predict its movement. And it comes up with an equation that would have taken weeks and months for any human to come up with. So it comes up with it in a very short period of time. And what happens is that Lipscomb and Schmidt, they release this equation, they release this software out into the world as a free download called Eureka. And so people all over the world have access to it. You can download it yourself. If you have a complex set of data, you can feed it to the Eureka, which will analyze and find the patterns. And so this guy, the scientist, has this complex data set on cell death and regeneration. He fed it to Eureka, which found a pattern and a formula for predicting the cell's death. But the scientist himself did not know what it meant. They didn't know what the formula, where it came from, and how it works. So we have this cutting-edge scientists in their fields that do not understand what the computer is doing for them, and that's a little disconcerting. In 2010, the stock market just completely crashed for a couple minutes. It was a huge, harrowing drop. And what happens is that 80% of all trades on the stock market is ran by computers, which means the stock market is basically just a bunch of computers talking to each other, making trades with each other, and so the floor is dominated. So what happened was there were people to this day don't really know what happened actually, but one of the computers made a mistake, and the Dow dipped and it fell. And so it happened because the algorithms playing the stock market are playing at levels humans don't understand. See the thread. So predictions: gel pen users are 23% more likely to drive solo to work than pencilers, who are more likely to bike. And so in 2006, there was an article written that said that by Malcolm Gladwell, that said that we can build machines to predict movies, and Hollywood is actually generating scripts based upon artificial intelligence deciding which formula of storytelling makes a movie. So initially we're talking about mundane things about our lives, like whether or not gel pen users versus whether or not we are pencil users, and whether or not we're going to ride a bike, predicting that. Now we're talking about, this is talking about actually, it's designing our culture around us and storytelling. And so Mike McCready developed some software that actually helped him create software that analyzes and predicts new music's popularity. So it's called Music X-Ray, and it generates hit songs. It's Norah Jones' song. Her first big hit was a Grammy Award winning, and so I think it was called "Come Away." What was it called? "Come Away with Me." So yeah, this is technology is generating our culture in a profound way. David Cope, he feeds computers hundreds of classical scores, and then it generates authentic, similar Bach or Beethoven scores that even fools professional musicians. So what are humans actually better at? We still have an edge on computers on generating new ideas. We think that we have better emotional intelligence. And physically, dexterity and mobility, we like to think that we still have an edge. So just that notion of dexterity and mobility is something that is being challenged, though. It's probably the one we're gonna lose. And if you look at our athletic ability, for example, this is Timo Boll, won the I think at the time world champion, or at least American champion of table tennis. This is him against a robot. So he loses the first point, but does go on to win the match. It's a competitive game, to say the least, and it just highlights this notion of physical dexterity and our physical abilities. Well, maybe they can be replaced as well. Maybe we'll be sitting around an arena watching some robots compete against each other. Just, it's limitless, it seems. This emotional intelligence is something that is often thought we have an exceptional, edge on computer technology. But in this particular example, computer could predict, and looking at images of pictures of people who are identified as straight or gay, homosexual, and computers can predict more accurately 80 to 90% of the time, depending on the parameters put in place. So this is definitely this facial recognition software is something that law enforcement uses quite a bit for identifying suspects. And this opens up quite a, I think, disconcerting rabbit hole that it could go down. So your experiment, it is to give up something and to then start asking some big questions about it. How has the technology that you've given up impacted your views and experiences? How does the technology change your social relationships, if it does? And how does technology create the need of other technologies? All right. Hope this has been your worthwhile, and hope you have a good rest of your day, whatever part of the day it is that you're in. All right. Bye-bye.